We're very, very honored to have Seth Rodewald-Bates as our Harrison Lecture Series speaker this year, kicking off the series. You've seen the posters for it around. In addition to their deep commitment to excellence in architecture, Robert and Frida Harrison, the generous benefactors of this series, have also always been strong supporters in landscape architecture. So I'm excited to kick off this year's Harrison Lecture Series with a genre-defining, crossover, chart-topping hit. Personal growth is possible because I didn't call it a band. When you ask an architect who's your favorite architect, there will be a wide variety of responses. Typically it's I am, but there's a wide variety of responses. However, when you ask an architect who is your favorite landscape architect, the field narrows considerably. And at the top of that list, you'll usually find James Corner Field Operations. Beginning around a little more than 30 years ago as a small collaborative practice, they've grown by leaps and bounds to become an international, multi-office mainstay of modern landscape architecture. But in their growth, they have not sacrificed the quality, depth, or integrity that we know them for. Their unique and refreshing vision is founded on carefully balancing the natural and the synthetic, the rough and the smooth, the planned and the happenstance, but always with a deep commitment to ecologically sustainable practices and innovative public spaces. As leaders in the landscape urbanism movement, their projects which define the genre and which have become definitive in shaping of the modern city are too numerous to mention. I'm serious. There's just, I could stand here, list them, and we'd be done. Plus, I don't want to steal Seth's thunder. Seth Rodewald-Bates is a licensed landscape architect and senior associate at James Corner Field Operations, San Francisco. He has more than 18 years of experience across a wide diversity of project types. His portfolio includes Pier 70, a 28-acre mixed-use development and waterfront park in San Francisco's Dogpatch neighborhood, the recently completed Tunnel Tops, a 14-acre park on the San Francisco Bay, and ongoing work for NBC Universal's Burbank campus in Los Angeles. Seth has experience with numerous campus, waterfront, urban, and mixed-use projects throughout the U.S. and abroad, and is adept at both resolving intricate design problems as well as delivering complex, large-scale built works. Prior to joining field operations, Seth worked at PWP Landscape Architecture, where he assisted with the expansion of Glenstone, a contemporary art museum near Washington, D.C., which encompasses 230 acres of designed landscape experience. Prior to that, Seth also did exciting and varied work at Spackman Michaels of New Orleans, Sasaki in Boston, and even pursued his passion for large-scale site-specific art as an intern at the Canati Foundation in Marfa, Texas. Sorry, Chinati. Seth received a Bachelor's of Science in Horticulture magna cum laude from Stephen F. Austin State University and a Master in Landscape Architecture from the Robert Reich School of Landscape Architecture at Louisiana State University. He has taught at SF Austin, the Boston Architectural College, LSU, and at Tulane. But you're not here to listen to me drone on, so I'll stop and ask you to warmly welcome the first guest lecturer in our Fall 2023 Harrison Lecture Series, Seth Rodewald-Bates.
All right. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. That sounds a lot more impressive than it actually is. Glad to be in Starkville. It's been about 25 years, I think, since my last visit, but here I am again. And excited to share the work of field operations with everyone today. I want to talk about the work in kind of the context of cities and nature and bringing nature back into the city. This is kind of in the present consciousness been called rewilding, landscape urbanism, landscape architecture as we know it in the classical sense. And this really defines the practice in general. We work in cities. We create vibrant, resilient, equitable, open public space. And we believe in the transformative nature of place in the urban context. Field operations is most well known for the High Line. As Dwayne mentioned, the firm was founded by James Corner roughly 30 years ago and really kind of came to prominence from his work as the chair at the University of Pennsylvania, and then through a series of competitions, namely Fresh Kills Park in Staten Island in 2001, and then the High Line in 2004. And I'm going to talk kind of briefly through a range of projects built and unbuilt first, and then we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into the Presidio Tunnel Tops, which just opened last year, and kind of look at how some of these projects come together. We're currently a collective of about 100 designers from around the world. We are, a diverse group, majority women, and we represent over 14 countries at the moment. We work in 5 offices around the world. So New York is our flagship. We also have an office in London, Shenzhen, Philadelphia, and then San Francisco, which is where I'm based currently. We work at a variety of project types around the world. And really, we are a global practice. We do work extensively in the US, but we also work wherever we feel we can make an impact around the world. And we do this at the scale of a bench or a planter. In this case, this is a custom facade living wall on the Hong Kong waterfront, which we designed using a kind of modular GFRC panel. Or at the scale of regional infrastructure. And this is Downsview Airport in Toronto, which is a 520-acre plus kind of new city in the former Downsview Airport. This is a competition entry with the Office of Metropolitan Architecture, in which we sought to kind of create this new city with parks and a wild that connects adjacent open space through a series of new precincts in the city. Unfortunately, we did not win this one. This went to Henning Larsen. So, but using the idea of rewilding or bringing nature back into a city to create, kind of places both for animals, plants, and people to coexist. We're opportunistic, so we seek perhaps unusual or unexpected ways to bring nature back into cities. This is our work on the Domino Park waterfront in the foreground, and behind this is the former Domino Sugar Factory. Perhaps an unlikely place to think about bringing nature or landscape back into a building, but we've managed to create kind of this narrow scrim of landscape facade between the historical exterior of the building and the skin of the new building that's being created inside. This is with PAU Architects in New York. And so you can start to see where we're looking, at any dimension in any kind of context to bring plants and ecology back into the city. We lead with vision, and I think I spoke to some of the students about this earlier today. Vision is important because these projects often take a really long time. So this is our work at the Seattle waterfront. This project started as a competition in the office in 2010, and it's still going today. So 13 years plus, and still trucking along. But the idea that there's a vision that stakeholders, clients, the community, and the lowly landscape architects can cling to as projects, kind of go through a natural evolution of work. This is similar to other projects around the world where, failing or degraded infrastructure, in this case the Alaskan Way Viaduct, had to come down. And we use this as an opportunity to kind of create a true kind of pedestrian scaled waterfront experience in Seattle, which had been cut off by the viaduct from downtown. And so we're working in fairly narrow sections to try to bring back robust kind of native plantings in what used to be underneath a 6-lane highway. This is the first phase, which is recently opened. We're also looking at not just terrestrial landscapes, but so this is the work along the seawall in Seattle, and part of the design was really activating the edge of the waterfront, both for people and for animals. And so working with marine ecologists, we developed a series of custom seawall precast panels. So this shows tide levels, mean and low, as well as providing a habitat shelf for kelp and spawning to happen. Salmon require a certain amount of light, so we worked to develop a glass block paving that allows enough light to reach this habitat to actually be productive and useful in terms of bringing life back to the Seattle waterfront. And there's now ongoing research with the University of Washington, and there's actually salmon that spawn along the waterfront again for the first time in many, many years. The kind of capstone of the Seattle project is what we call Overlook Walk. And this is a collaboration with LMN architects who are working on the new addition to the aquarium over here on the right. But this is kind of a signature piece that will connect Pike's Place Market. For those of you that know, Seattle is kind of the iconic fish throwing market with the clock and all the activity, down back to Pier 62, which over across this vista, the Puget Sound, which has been cut off completely and inaccessible for pedestrians for many, many years. This is the proposed view. You can see Pier 62 over here on the right. This is underway now. This was from earlier this year, and then this is a few weeks ago. So this is set to open in 2024 if we're optimistic, 2025 maybe if we're being realistic. But this is a huge kind of piece of infrastructure that will bring, both ecology but also people, from downtown stitching back to the waterfront over Elliott Way. We respect context, and we seek to enhance context. This is some of our work with Herzog and Demeron for the new hospital at Parnassus, and this is in San Francisco. And you can see in the background Mount Sutro and Sutro Tower, kind of the iconic pieces of the San Francisco skyline. And this is a new $4.5 billion hospital project that will span, again, 10 to 15 years, and we're just beginning. This started in 2020. And this is a donor-funded project, and the idea was really to kind of change the typology and expectation of what a hospital can be, and particularly what the experience of being a patient and a family member at a hospital can be. And so we've sought to draw Mount Sutro, the ecology of Mount Sutro, which is unique to San Francisco, even a city within, there are 40 or 50 microclimates. This is even unique within that, bringing kind of the typology of planting and trees from Mount Sutro all the way through to the street and then up to the healing garden, but bringing Mount Sutro back to level 6, which is this patient and family garden, and then also kind of creating this healing habitat. So anyone that's had to deal with long-term acute care, this is meant to be a very unique, peaceful, and contemplative space for patients and family to recover. Working to some of our work in Los Angeles, this is ongoing work that I'm heavily involved in at the moment with the kind of revisioning of the NBC Universal Campus. Again, this idea of bringing nature back to constituency, in this case, the kind of creative culture of NBC in the studio. So not only do you have kind of the corporate headquarters of NBC here, but this campus is also shared by all of the sound stages and studio kind of post-production for much of the film production that goes on at NBC. And previously, this was all paved. This was a completely asphalt existence. Everybody used to cruise around in golf carts. Nobody walked anywhere, and it was pretty miserable. And so we're working with Lever Architects and HRA, House Robertson Architects, to kind of infill two kind of major building renovations. So the Employee Center and a large kind of mixed office space over here, along this unique kind of pedestrian paseo experience through the main spine of the campus. And so here you can kind of get a sense of the Employee Center here on the left, and this kind of Creative Commons paseo experience. Again, for the first time, people are actually able to walk comfortably around the campus, and then there's a whole series of kind of outdoor meeting and breakout spaces along the spine of the paseo. This is kind of the Commons looking back at the office space. You can kind of see, because we are fortunate to be in Southern California here, the indoor-outdoor relationship is quite strong. All of these buildings completely open up. So there's kind of full transparency between indoor and outdoor. It's also trying to be responsible stewards of the kind of water use issues that are quite prevalent in Southern California and will become more prevalent everywhere. But all of the plantings, which are pretty extensive, will all be irrigated with stormwater and recycled irrigation that's captured and reused. And this is another view kind of the garden experience along the paseo. This is partial installation as of a few months ago, and this is the site today. So it's in progress. It's a challenge to build a large campus within an operating campus. So if you can imagine, they cannot shut down the studio lot. They can't shut down production. And there's also a writer's strike going on outside the front door. So it's been a very interesting time to build this particular project. And then I'll also talk a little bit here about the High Line, which is probably what we're most well known for. How many, going to show of hands, how many people have seen or been to the High Line? Okay, so we've got a few first-hand visitors. So the High Line, as I said, was one of the kind of defining moments for the practice in the early thousands. And for a little context, it's a roughly mile-and-a-half long elevated former railway along the west side of Manhattan. So you can see from the south, this is now actually another project we're working on, Gansevoort. Little Island, for those of you that know it, is in this blank space here. And this goes all the way up to 34th, which is now Hudson Yards in Manhattan West on the north side of Chelsea. It started life as a derelict, kind of abandoned, wild garden. And the competition initially in 2003, 2004, sought to proposals that would kind of keep the character. That was one of the main points of the brief, was that they didn't want to lose kind of the wild character of the High Line. And what's interesting is that this was a grassroots effort. Robert Hammond and the Friends of the High Line basically started out as people who like to take walks here. And they built a coalition between the community, civic donors, and the city of New York to actually make this a reality. And today, this started in 2001, not long after 9/11, and is now continuing. We just opened the last phase of this a few months ago. So that's spanned almost the full life of the firm. But in its essence, the High Line is a fairly simple idea. It's about furnishings, it's about plantings, and paving, and creating places for people to perch in and amongst the city. So you can people watch, you can read a book, you can walk. There are moments for introspection, there are moments for nature to take over. So this is one of the flyover canopies. So you're actually walking through the forest at this point. And you can also enjoy it in any season. And one of the interesting things that, as the High Line has kind of evolved over time, is it's really taken on a life of its own. And it is a huge tourist attraction now. There are millions of people that come to New York strictly to visit the High Line. But at the same time, it is a place for New Yorkers. This is people that walk to work every day on the High Line because it's their preferred way to commute to work. So it has become a spectacle, but it is still very much a place for New Yorkers. And this is towards the end, so this is actually technically phase 4, if you want to consider it that. The High Line Spur, which is kind of a platform now for rotating installations. This was opened just briefly before COVID. And this now leads into the High Line Connector, which is a kind of a new and distinct piece of the High Line that connects the spur here to Manhattan West. And that was a collaboration with SOM on this kind of Core 10 paving and mass timber bridge that takes you over to Manhattan West. This is a little deeper dive into the Presidio. Again, show of hands, any San Francisco, Presidio, Golden Gate Bridge. Anybody? Got a few hands. Okay, so this is new territory for many then. This is the Presidio in San Francisco. So it's roughly 1,300 acres, kind of promontory. The Golden Gate Bridge starts down here on the lower right. And the Presidio has a unique and complicated history. So it is the kind of historic homelands of the Ramaytush Ohlone Native Americans. And like most places that we've built on top of, this was prized both because it had access to one of the best bays in the world, and it had fresh water. That also made it very attractive for the Spaniards that came here in 1776 and established the Presidio as we know it. And it has remained until the early 90s as an active military fort of some kind since then. It is kind of unique in the sense where it sits. It is one piece of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, so everything in green here. I forget the exact mileage. It's some obscene amount of coastline that it encompasses. But the Presidio sits here kind of at the nexus in San Francisco, at the base of the Golden Gate Bridge. Let's see if this works. There we go. Oh, too fast. And the Presidio is a unique entity in and of itself. So there are three kind of jurisdictions that overlap here. There's the National Park Service, there's the Presidio Trust, and then there's the Golden Gate Conservancy, which is a fundraising arm for these two places. So the Presidio is tasked as part of its charter with being completely self-sufficient. So unlike every other national park in the country, it does not receive any money from the National Park Service. It is self-sustaining by leasing existing buildings for commercial, residential, and event spaces. And so that's how it pays for maintenance and projects like tunnel tops. So again, kind of the long arc of projects, just to give people a sense of time here. This began in 1989 in the earthquake, Loma Prieta earthquake. And again, failing infrastructure completely destroyed the viaduct that connects the 101 freeway to the Golden Gate Bridge. And fortunately for us, there was a landscape architect named Michael Painter in 1989 who came up with the idea, this was the original kind of vision sketch that he did, which was just the idea that this road would no longer be a wall between the Presidio and the San Francisco Bay, that there were going to be tunnels and there were going to be opportunities for people to walk for the first time in a long time from the main post of the Presidio down to the bay. So that's 1989. Fast forward into the 2014s, and that has come to pass. So there was a series of prefab tunnels. Oops. Decline that. There we go. In place, which were engineered by HNTB under Caltrans, who's the California Transportation Department. And so these were through the Presidio. This is an easement through, a state easement through federal land. And so you can kind of see this is during construction when they're rerouting what is the 101 freeway through these tunnels up to the bridge. As the tunnels were completing, the Presidio Trust went out with RFQ for a new gateway to the Presidio. Again, this is a national park at a very unique kind of location within the San Francisco Bay. Again, one of the most spectacular kind of vistas in the world, right up there with Sydney and a few others. It is panoramic. It is 360. You may sit there and be kind of mesmerized by the bridge, but if you turn around, you have Mount Sutro, you look to Palace of Fine Arts, Transamerica, now Salesforce, you have views to Alcatraz, YBI, Treasure Island. And so it's an incredible kind of vista. It's also kind of, for lack of a better term, a central gathering point for the park. It's a national park that was an Army base. Army bases don't really have kind of front doors necessarily. There's gates, but there's no real sense of place or entrance in the Presidio at large, other than kind of going through a few pillars. And it also kind of ties together, the main kind of elements of the Presidio, in particular Crissy Field and Crissy Marsh, Main Post, Letterman, and the National Cemetery. And so during the competition, the idea came of this 360 kind of panorama, this one kind of Presidio. The idea that this is a platform where you can really experience this vista in a way that you don't experience anywhere else in San Francisco. And being that this is a national park, this is an opportunity to bring that vista to everyone. And so during the course of the competition, it was a little different than usual. All of the teams were it was kind of an open book competition, so all the teams participated in the same very extensive community outreach, whether that's public meetings, We went out into neighborhoods all over the city because this is the Presidio is for all, not just for kind of the neighbors. We wanted it to be accessible to everyone, in the Bay. And so through this process, we were selected as the winners of the competition. So this is what we inherited. And these are early kind of competition schemes that came out of that public engagement process. So you can start to see, a series of lawns, plazas, overlooks that start to kind of define the space. This was the kind of final plan at the competition. And thanks to a quite interesting process over many years, we ended up with something like this. So if you notice, there's some changes. There's a lot of lawn in this version, right? We came in and it was like, oh, well, this is a great view. Let's just have lots of lawn. And both the community and the Presidio Trust were like, well, we have a giant lawn, just up the hill here in Main Post, which can accommodate all that. We need more varied kind of nooks and crannies and different gardens to look at. And so that kind of led to the evolution of this plan where we have a series of smaller lawns that are flanked with display gardens. The creation of, let's see if this is going to work, maybe, not quite, kind of a series of 3 overlooks. You can kind of see the 3 points mid-screen there that overlook a bluff into kind of an adventure play or outdoor education area. And so these are early views, again, from that time. The idea, this is a platform. This isn't a design that shouts at you necessarily. This is a place where you can go and take in, one of these incredible vistas along the bay in a natural, kind of restored nature in the Presidio. And so this is an early view, kind of looking back towards Alcatraz. And you can see the adventure play in the front and kind of this native bluff along the path. A couple interesting things to note. This site has about 43 feet of grade change, but again, national park. We want it to be accessible for everyone, so there is fully accessible routes across that bluff, this being the main path down. But again, the idea that you'll be able to walk for the first time, from the Main Post down to Crissy Field. So how do we actually build something like this? Again, this was 2014. This gives you an idea of kind of the numerous entities that come together to make something like this happen. As landscape architects, we were prime with our kind of list of consultants. You had the Presidio Trust with their stakeholder group, and then you had the general contractors who actually had to build this. And one of the notes I'd like to kind of acknowledge, we talk about design work a lot, and we talk about kind of the sole genius vision a lot, but field operations is really a meritocracy. It's not about whether or not James Corner drew that sketch. It's who had the best idea, and then it takes many hands to build these types of projects. And so in this case, thousands, right, between designers and contractors. And so it's important to kind of keep that in mind. I'm presenting this to you, but it is the work of many. And so we finally broke ground. We called it a ground making rather than a ground breaking because there was no land here before. So in 2019, end of 2019, we started to cover the tunnels, and then COVID happened. So that was through a little bit of wrench in things. Nobody had that on their bingo card. Because this was a federal project, we were kind of immediately granted essential status, and so we only lost, in the end, a few weeks kind of in the beginning of the pandemic because this was all outdoors. We were able to keep kind of construction moving. But you can start to see, kind of the bones of the plan emerging here. So viewing terraces, overlooks, at the center and eastern edges, and then the shapes of the lawns and the gardens start to come together. And again, this is a 14-acre site. Not a bad place to go spend time during COVID if you had an opportunity to get out. And this was opening day in 2022. So you can start to see, we always joke, and we'll look at a little bit about the plants. The plants were so small, we were so sad, but they will grow. And so it's one of those things where, you have to be patient as a landscape architect. So this really won't kind of reach its stride for another probably 3 or 4 years. So we have to be patient, but we're an impatient bunch, so we have to wait. But it doesn't make us happy when we see so much brown in our photos. But I thought we'd take a quick spin through a few of the kind of unique challenges or opportunities within the project, starting with the planting. So we saw a few of these images from the early competition, this bluff escarpment, right? This is the Presidio historically was a dune. It was a sand dune, next to the Pacific Ocean. The Army came in and planted a bunch of invasive trees, eucalyptus and Monterey cypress, which are not from there, don't belong there, as windbreaks. And so kind of erased a lot of the native ecology. The Presidio has been very diligent and progressive about bringing back all of their kind of native ecologies to the point where we have to procure plants that were harvested or grown from seed, harvested, or cuttings taken in the Presidio itself. We can't, even if it's the same species, the germplasm has to be from the Presidio proper. And so you can get a sense of how many plants we're talking about. There's over 200,000 kind of live plants were installed here. And again, most of which were grown in the Presidio, in their own nursery. And so this, you see seed production on the right and cuttings on the right, or sorry, seed production on the left, cuttings on the right. Small trees, grasses. This is my colleague Carrie Wong over here checking on to see if things are rooted before it goes in the ground. And then we also, because of the kind of unique plant palette, had to contract grow everything else. So this is at a nursery in Carmel, where we were able to grow most of the rest of the understory for the project. Same goes for trees. Very unique kind of tree species because it is in the Presidio. These are leucodendron, and then black pine. And when you actually try to translate a 2D drawing onto a 3D environment, things tend to change a little bit. So this is Carrie and our client, Ron Reyes with the Trust, looking very concerned about potential layout here. A happier Carrie during the first round. So this was our mock-up of the bluff planting. So this was kind of our trial run to see how things would work. You can get a sense of kind of both the fact that they were very small plants, but also fairly dense. And then this was translated over almost 8 acres of planting. So this is kind of the process. We send photos back and forth of pointing at different plants, like move this one a little to the right, move that one a little to the left. But then it is finally starting to kind of reach the point where it's growing in. So if you remember that early image, this is the coastal bluff as it starts to grow in. And like I said, it needs a couple more years, but it's well on its way now. The other piece, we talked about kind of planting, paving, and furnishing. And so the other kind of piece that we've choreographed here are these overlooks. So these kind of battered concrete structures are kind of evenly dispersed along the top of the bluff. And they were original to the competition. They've gone through many iterations. There's been there were many stakeholders that had to weigh in on this, including the State Office of Historic Preservation, the Trust, and others that dictated color, form, finish, all of these types of things. But it was really important to us to keep these kind of promontories, right, as a reference to the batteries that were in the, kind of speak to the military history, but also provide these really clear vistas out to the horizon. I talked to a few people about mock-ups at lunch, but we started with mock-ups. No one had ever done this with concrete before in terms of a finished application. This shotcrete was usually used on highways and things like that. Nobody had tried to build this kind of parametric geometry before. And it was a bit of a process. We had a few starts and stops. So we built one, tore it out, and did it again. And third time, everybody knew what they were doing, so we were in good shape. But they are, quite robust structures that kind of perch along the edge of the bluff. And so this is a little bit of the process. This is the application. And it really, we think of concrete as kind of this, a more controlled material, maybe in some sense, and precast in particular. This is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. This is a completely handmade, hand-laid kind of type of concrete that really takes on a life of whichever hand was shaping it. And so this is Rigo Machis. We call him Rigo the Ego. He was the foreman for the concrete contractors and kind of led, I think at one point there were probably 40 or 50 people working, during the actual installation process on these. And you can kind of see how They start to come together. Basically, half of one was done each day, is how that was set up. Carrie, we were on site the whole time to make sure that geometries were correct and things needed to be adjusted were taken care of. And then they were washed at the end of the day. So this is the eastern overlook completed, and then you can see the central overlook here in the middle of the foreground. And they've kind of, you'll notice that they do not have, with the exceptions of the central overlook, they do not have guardrails, which we didn't really understand how people might use those, but they have become quite popular as a place to take in the sunset, especially overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge. Another piece that we'll look at is the play and outdoor education. So a big component of the Presidio mission is education. And so they have a pretty robust program called the Chrissy Youth Center, in which they bring kids throughout the school year out, and then they have an opportunity to become rangers for the summer. And so they have programmed kind of spaces all throughout this area. But there's some kind of unique features within this that I thought we'd look at. This is the hydro tunnel. So part of the history of the Presidio is it is fresh water, and how they moved that water through the park, or through the base rather, was through a series of kind of flumes. And so this boulder structure has a flume through it. Although it appears fairly monolithic, it's actually two 7.5-ton slabs of granite that we found in Southern California and craned in. And you can get a sense of kind of the structure that is concealed to make that happen. And now, unintentionally, was not supposed to be climbed on. There are signs everywhere that says, please do not climb. If every weekend you go out here, it is completely mobbed with kids, my own included, that do not listen to signs or parents. So this is a blurry picture of what we call the mother tree. So one of the kind of key elements was this idea of, play structures that would kind of evolve. They'd be allowed to degrade over time and then replaced. And we worked with Earthscapes, which is a play manufacturer out of Canada. And they found this great giant white oak, and they said, we have to use this. We don't know how we're going to use it, but we have to use it. So they started to hollow it out. They cut it into pieces, and they shipped it down to us. And, CAD and 2D plans versus live dead trees don't always line up, but we managed to get it situated. And it's turned into kind of this really amazing hollowed out tree that you can climb through, around, and over, in a completely kind of safe area. So if you fall off the top, you won't hopefully break any limbs. But it's been a real highlight for the park. And then we'll look at kind of elements, again, speaking to this idea of leading with vision. This was an early competition view, and you can kind of see the overlooks in their previous life. They were cantilevered and had cool things on them, but we didn't get those. But we also show, this idea of this massive kind of driftwood seating element from the beginning. And these morphed over time into kind of a modular idea or reinvention or reimagining of what a driftwood kind of feature might look like, but always meant to kind of be these iconic set pieces of furnishing within the park. So these were studied in model, digital and physical, and then documented. The Presidio has a very intensive kind of reforestation program, so they harvest thousands of board feet of Monterey cypress every year as part of their forestry management program. And we were able to use all of that reclaimed wood to create all of the custom furnishings for the park, including these driftwood benches. So they were milled, kiln dried. We then went through a round of mock-ups. So this is high density foam. So we started to see how these might come to life and how they might fit together. And using these not just as kind of perfunctory moments, but as design tools. So we reviewed this, and as I'm sure you can see, we started to notice, we have some issues here with reveals and nosing and things like that, and just the level of resolution on the CNC tooling was not necessarily what we wanted. So we were able to adjust things in the mock-up. And then these were all individually milled on CNC and then finished by hand. So this is kind of the dry fit. So these were fairly heated conversations around what piece stays, what piece goes, what gets filled, what stays, and what gets shipped out. And so after these were kind of reviewed and discussed, you can see kind of the internal framing. Here, they were individually numbered, crated up, and brought back out piece by piece to the park. So this is kind of the full dry fit here with the lighting. Reassembled on site because we are on top of tunnels, and so we had weight restrictions as to what we could actually bring out here. This is Gizmo Art Fabricators. They're local to San Francisco, and they did a great job figuring this out. Never, in our experience, has never been done before, so they were game and willing to figure it out. One unexpected piece was that we had some people break in. This is Thrasher magazine for those of you that are skaters, and they were amazed that somebody hadn't skated this yet. So that was our first publication pre-construction opening was Thrasher. Needless to say, the park was not super happy about this, but great shots though, great shots. But now they are kind of the main seating element along the bluff in the park, and they're an incredible place to sit and watch the sunset because they are wood, they're warm, and so San Francisco is always freezing and foggy, and so these are, even on a cold day, are warmer than you would think, and really a great place to lounge and hang out. So those are a few of the kind of kit of parts, elements of the Presidio, and these all have come together now in a park that has kind of been successful even beyond what our expectations or hopes were, and certainly the Presidio Trust's hopes and expectations. It's packed on the weekends, but there are still places where you can have kind of moments of contemplation. They do kind of fireside ranger talks every weekend around the fire pit, and the playground is just mobbed. That was, I'd say, our one miss is that there's a line literally out the gate every weekend for the playground, and it's a great place. This is my son, shameless plug. On the climbing wall. I can't take him there as much anymore because it's really hard to get him to leave. So I've learned my lesson. But it is a truly kind of unique experience along the San Francisco Bay. And you can't beat the view. Every day is different, and the weather changes about every 5 minutes. So if you're bored, you can just hang out and wait. And it's been so popular that Phase 2 is in the works. So this is kind of the expansion area over here on the upper left, calling Outpost Meadow. And this was kind of a logical conclusion. This is surface parking right now, and so we're hoping to carve out a little bit more nature here and kind of extend on the success of Tunnel Tops proper. So you can kind of see this is the proposed view. Again, building on the elements that are the most successful and the most popular, which have been, picnic areas, lawn, and the view out to the bridge. And with that, I'll go ahead and wrap. Take questions. Thank you very much.